What's the best way to sell yourself? First, you need to define who you are, which is also known as your personal brand. And you need to be able to communicate it to others in a way that makes them want to continue talking to you or talk to you again. We call this an elevator pitch. So what is an elevator pitch? There are many explanations, but essentially it's about selling yourself by describing who you are and why someone else should care in 30 seconds or less. Interestingly, the term is taken from the early days of the internet explosion when web development needed venture capital. The best companies were those that could explain a business proposition to the occupants of an elevator in the time it took them to ride to their floor. For you, an elevator pitch is probably as essential as a business card. You need to be able to say who you are, what you do, what you're interested in doing, and how you can be a valuable resource in a short enough time period to avoid losing the interest of the other person. Most people won't want to listen for more than a minute, and many busy people, and remember, everyone is busy, will listen for shorter than that time. So here are some things to keep in mind as you build your elevator pitch. Number 1, get quiet with yourself first. Make sure you know what you really want to communicate. Ask yourself some focused questions. Can your point be boiled down to one sentence? If not, it probably needs clarifying. Next, have a provocative opening. Stories work well for this. They tend to paint a picture in the listener's mind and help build that emotional connection. Then make sure you have one main point you want to get across to the listener. Once you figure out that one main point, figure out why your listener should care about that point or how it fills his or her needs. If you can say it in a way that the listener cares about, he or she is much more likely to hear it. Remember, keep it simple. You want this to be a 30 to 45 second monologue. As you build and practice your elevator pitch, here's a good acronym to keep in mind. SUCCESS, spelled S-U-C-C-E-S. The first S stands for simplicity. Start with one sentence that gets attention, yet simple. This is the most important part because it grabs the listener's attention, and that's what you want. U is unexpected. Keep the listener's attention by saying something he or she might not expect. C is concrete. Use relevant analogies or metaphors to bring things to life or to paint a picture in the listener's mind. The next C stands for credible. If you use recent statistics or highlight your past outcomes and accomplishments, you can demonstrate you know what you're talking about. E stands for emotional connection. For this, try to use stories or methods that speak to your listener because they involve things that are important to the listener. For example, if the listener has kids or likes to run, keep this in mind and relate that to what you're trying to say, if possible. S stands for stories. Stories are a great way to keep that emotional connection and keep the pitch interesting. The hardest part for most of the doctors I work with is getting started. It's hard to make the time and feel the energy it takes to get your creative juices flowing, and it's hard to know what to say. We all have stories, things that have happened to us, times when we felt like a failure, times when what we did resulted in success despite all the odds. But then that little seed of doubt creeps in and we wonder, is this story even going to be interesting to someone else, or does it just make me look like a jerk? Get past that. Laugh about it. Shake your head and realize it might, and then write it down anyway. You just need to get started. You can revise it later or change it altogether when you do remember that brilliant story with just the right blend of humor, humility, and substance. Or maybe you'll just shrug and remember that you'll never have that perfect story. We're all human, and that's the reason we connect to stories in the first place. I have developed a script for you to help you get started with your elevator pitch. Keep in mind you'll continue to refine it, and every time you do, it's a chance to practice it and continue to refine it so it sounds more natural to you and it feels authentic. Take a moment to download the script from the resources section and make it yours by adding your own experience and interests. The very last sentence is more important than most people give it credit for. The people you talk with care about what you do in your career path, but they connect with you through shared interests or admiration of your interests. So be sure to keep that one in and fill it in with 3 of your own. Running always works well for me because most people admire runners and think they're hardcore and can go above and beyond in any circumstance. You can choose one for yourself. Remember, you want this to feel and sound authentic, otherwise you're not going to want to deliver it to anyone. So please keep that in mind. Remember that the script is just a starting point for you. Use all of it or just use parts of it or use none of it. You can use it to simply get you started and then modify it completely. The most important thing is just to get started. It should be obvious what your homework is. Start and refine your elevator pitch.